everyone. I sent out the agenda just now, so if you guys need to review it, we can do that. I apologize in the delay in sending meeting minutes. It's been pretty hectic, but um, if you guys are okay to um, approve those meeting minutes, then we can move forward. If I can have a unless anybody has any comments, otherwise, um, sorry. Otherwise, can I get a motion to approve?
Hi, Hennessy. Motion to approve meeting minutes.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Great. Thank you guys. Allison Fraser just emailed that something came up, so she won't be attending. But otherwise, so we have a lot, I think, to get through. We only put here Article 85, but I did send out a whole bunch of stuff for Article 80. So which one would you guys rather review? Would you guys rather go through the Article 80 stuff since I just sent it and it's been, or would you guys rather talk about, I think, so I can give an update on Article 85. So we had Lydia, Allison, Chelsea, who's the staff architect for historic preservation, and Amanda have been meeting in a smaller session to discuss some Article 85 action items that came out of our last meeting. And so I did a couple of things. So we have a volunteer working with us, and she is going through our Article 85 data to see, to first make sure that everything we have is in order, and then to see of the buildings that trigger Article 85 or that go through an Article 85 process, how many of those are deemed significant, which we have it available, but I just wanted her to on NAC, but I wanted her to double check from the data that we had prior to NAC that they're the same. So how many are significant, how many are not significant, and of those that are significant, how many have a 90-day delay invoked, how many are so how many are withdrawn? And I say withdrawn and resubmitted is a separate category from just withdrawn, just to see if people are withdrawing and resubmitting something versus just withdrawing. And then I'm also seeing if something was demolished prior to Article 85. So it's happened a couple times. So I want to make sure that we keep track of that. Or if somebody submits an Article 85 application and that building had already been demolished like years prior, because I've seen in the data some instances of that. So wanted to keep track of that. And then also wanted to see by neighborhood, which neighborhoods are trying to use Article 85 the most, and to see if there's something correlating to, how many landmarks there are in a neighborhood versus how many times they're trying to, use Article 85. So, I'm hoping to tell a story with that data, because we're, as we try to make recommendations for Article 85, I have a whole bunch of information that I'm finding from Imagine Boston 2030, and the initiatives that have come out of that. So like the zero waste initiative and how that was supposed to be part of, deconstruction was supposed to be part of that. And I've in fact even found some stuff about how this is from when Susan Casino was there. So she did some research into the demolitions in Boston, and she found that 99% of buildings are demolished, of those that go up to get, demolition permit. So I'm pulling in a lot of information. It's not quite ready, I would say, to show you guys, since I'm still working with that volunteer and she's doing really good stuff. But we have a lot of information. I think we're aggregating a lot of information based on what we discussed in our last meeting and how we're moving forward. And I will say that we are hoping to bring this in front of the Chief of Environment, Energy, and Open Space in 2 weeks, right? 1 to 2 weeks because we want to make sure that he's aware of this, and that we can, have a fully polished, reviewed memo for you guys and for the city staff to review and submit as a recommendation. So that's what I have for Article 5. I can show you guys what the memo looks like, but there's nothing significant there. Otherwise, I think we can talk about Article 80. I shared with you guys those drafts, the draft summary, or that they had posted online, and I also shared a feedback form. I saw nobody put anything in there, but so I want to know what did you guys want to review first? That Article 80 plan.
I think whichever you recommend, Hennessy. I haven't really had a chance to do a deep dive into the Article 80 draft summary. Have you been able to dig in? Do you have like sort of some high level concerns or support over that?
I mean, I think the summary is the best way to dig into it together because it's 8 pages, whereas the whole plan is 87. So
Okay.
the Office of Historic Preservation, like we said, was able to review that, or some of that they had sent out for feedback, and we provided some feedback with historic preservation in mind. But I think that it would be good to review their executive summary and then, talk about our thoughts and how we can, give the planning department some feedback or some recommendations from this subcommittee versus the, Office of Historic Preservation, so that it can
Yeah.
be a more, because I know that we're trying to weave it together, the Article 85 recommendations as while Article 80 is underway. So I think that it'd be good to just review their summary and then discuss from there if there are any highlights in the larger action plan. I'll look through it and we can talk about it. So I'll share my screen and then.
Sounds great. Yeah, it's nice to have that sort of framework that we can comment around instead of like, because if Office of Historic Preservation has already set that up, no need to kind of do some separate work, right?
Mhm. Yeah. So this is the first time actually that I'm seeing this executive summary. So we're looking at it together. So it's the planning department. They wanted to improve how residents, developers, and staff experience development review. And so this is about their Article 80 process. And they want to create this process to be rooted in predictability, consistency, transparency, and timelines that is inclusive of a diversity of voices, and make it easier for people to invest in Boston. So Article 80 obviously is of the Boston Zoning Code, sets the rules for the review of proposed real estate development projects throughout the city. And it was created in 1996. And it's the first modernization of it since its creation. So the problem that is that today's process is lengthy, opaque, unpredictable, and when coupled with outdated zoning codes, makes it harder to grow our city. So they were established 30 years ago in 1996, like we said, but development has changed significantly, sorry. Volume and complexity of development projects has increased. Development review procedures and operations have been constantly adapting to meet these challenges, which has resulted in a process that feels ad hoc, inaccessible, and unpredictable. Okay, great. So they have, in this, they go through their solution. They want a predictable process so community members know where, when, and how to provide feedback. Proponents can anticipate costs, required steps, and timelines of their permitting processes, and so that city staff understand their roles, responsibilities, and their deadlines. And the consistent process is one where community members have clear guidelines for participation that don't change from project to project. Proponents know the standards of review upfront and see that similar projects receive similar review, and that city staff measure and communicate performance through detailed data and metrics. So they want also a timely process for community members to efficiently provide feedback in low touch and high touch formats. They receive organized feedback. Proponents receive organized feedbacks quickly at each step of the process that allows them to incorporate changes in a timely fashion. And they want city staff to adhere to clear deadlines for each step of review. The time from the initial project proposal to building permit approval should decrease. And the transparent process is one where community members are aware of proposals and commitments from initial concept to final occupancy. I think that's interesting. Proponents understand the reason for each recommendation or required project change, and city staff demonstrate how specific planning principles and zoning standards guide the project outcomes that advance the mission of the planning department. So they have 3 recommendations, and each of them goes into more things. So they want effective engagement to diversify input and development. They'll do that by creating more opportunities to learn about projects and easier ways to provide feedback, such as online surveys. They'll replace current advisory groups with community advisory teams, which we've heard of before. I think that the action plan goes into that a little bit deeper, so we can check that out. And it's a new structure that will represent Boston's diversity while retaining existing expertise. So from what I remember from that action plan, the larger document, the community advisory teams will have term limits, they'll have trainings, they will review projects based on region. So there's a more consistent, process across the board. And community organizations.
I'm sorry, Hennessy. I don't know if it's just me, but I'm losing the sound a little bit.
Professionals, like planning professionals. I'm gonna try to. Is it better? Or is it?
Not much. Are others experiencing the same thing, or is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see what I can do.
Well, I don't usually recommend this while you're presenting. It may be helpful to turn off your video.
All right. Can you guys, is it okay? Is it still?
Your face is frozen, but your sound is coming through.
I'll try that. A little better? Okay. Sorry, guys. All right, so then the second thing that they want to do is create consistent standards for how projects provide mitigation and community benefits. So 2A would be to write new definitions for mitigation and community benefits. I think they do define that in their larger plan, and I think maybe that's something we could review. Establish clear dollar per square foot policies for transportation and infrastructure and open space and public road mitigation. They want to create stronger connections between recent planning and community benefits, as well as require proponents to file new disclosure on displacement impacts, which we had been discussing last meeting. So I think that's also something we should, dig into. All right, and then the third thing that they want to do is a coordinated review. So they want to establish a transparent, sequential, and coordinated approval process across the city. They want to formalize the pre-file process and align filing sequences with industry practices, lock in key decisions through a concept determination that can provide a clear and early no to inadequate proposals. They want to update and enforce response times, and they want to create interdepartmental portfolio review teams and enhance data-driven performance monitoring. So let's see. So these are this is their process and their methodology. So they did phase 1, which is they identified the issues with the Article 80 process currently. They did the draft recommendations. Phase 3 was continued engagement and due diligence. And the release action plan that's where we are now. And then they have a 60-day comment period, which ends in November, as I said. And then they're going to implement this in phases of 2025. Oh, okay. And then they have examples. Interesting. Hugh has lived in Boston his entire life and he owns his home. He cares about preserving the historic features of his neighborhood to ensure that the city he loves continues to retain its character for future generations. Bonnie's a busy mom who rents her home. She participates in community activities, but has too many family responsibilities to attend weeknight meetings. So I think that they're exploring the different kinds of ways that they will be communicating with people who have different availabilities. And Wanda's a local business owner and disability rights advocate. She's a member of her local community advisory team. So they have here, the pre-concept design includes an engagement plan for early engagement activities consisting of print, digital, and in-person methods. Existing conditions. So they review the neighborhood or area's current state, and then decisions are made on the engagement strategy and schedule, and early no's for projects not aligned with city goals. And then they give examples for how to learn about the proposed projects: flyers, signage near the site, and emails to sent to community advisory team members. So I guess Hugh will learn about it in the library and then attends the developer-led site walk. Bonnie will scan the QR code and she will complete a survey about her top 3 concerns. And Wanda will read the project information for the next community advisory team meeting, where they will review a group of projects in the area. Step 2, concept design. It includes proposals for building, including height, density, size, and more. Decisions will be made on big picture and priorities and how the project will be a good neighbor. So top community concerns: traffic and safety, housing prices, mobility constraints, parking, housing quality, tree canopies and heat islands, also flooding and water logging. So they're just, I guess, sharing other options for public engagement, such as workshops, social media, and the CAT meeting. And then step 3, schematic design. It includes concept refinement. So you review the project details through detailed designs and drawings. You evaluate potential impact, such as increased demand for transportation. And they give you an option of community benefits. And then decision made on project details like building materials and landscape plans, and specific mitigation and community benefit items, which are these on the side. All right, so that is it for the summary. We go through the website really quickly. They have the action plan, which I think I have open, but separately they ask you to fill out a survey, submit your comments, or to email, like I provided in the email that I sent you guys. And they also have 2 public meetings in mid-October, which I did say I would add to the commemoration commission calendar. So I'll make sure to do that if you guys are interested in attending those. And they also have events that they will be at to discuss other things. So they'll be at, the next thing they'll be at is the farmers market in Mission Hill. And then they'll also be here amplificando las voces latinas a través de la planificación urbana. Okay, this is in Spanish. So if you speak Spanish, go ahead. But then they'll be in Rosendale on the 19th and in Alston on the 20th. So they also go through the same, they go in more detail about their planning process. They have a frequently asked questions. It's great. And then the feedback form is down here. And then there's a Google form that I sent out. It's not on here, but I know it exists. But then, yeah, so we can click on the action plan. You guys see that, the action plan?
Yeah. Hey, Hennessy, back to the website is I didn't notice, but we kind of went through kind of quick. Is there a like part of the process that incorporates the feedback that they're going to get in the next 60 days? Like, are there more meetings to talk about the types of feedback that they got? Like, how are we going to sort of make sure that some of this feedback is incorporated? I didn't see that baked into the process.
Good question. So I don't think it's not on this part of the website. So um I wonder maybe if it's somewhere else. Because I know that they actually I'll just open this email that I
Yeah,
have.
because
It
most of it
says
looked like it just went from
an
60-day
email
public
to these
comment.
people, public, whatever. I don't know actually. Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm
so I
not
think
sure.
that's the first thing to get clarification on is if we take all of the time, to submit our comments and do all of this analysis, read the, 87 pages, is how is that going to be incorporated?
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't really see anything about how that's going to work.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it is on this larger, maybe they have that timeline thing that they use. So we've already seen a lot of this. Um, so I'm gonna scroll through and I think they have a timeline metric. I would hope. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool stuff. Fine. Okay, maybe they don't. I could have sworn to have something similar to that.
And I think the question was in relationship to the current public process about
Uh,
Article 80 reform, right? But it's also a question about in the new Article 80 process, how do we ensure that that input is incorporated?
yeah, so I'm thinking, here it is. This is what I was looking for. So we are in September 2024. Phase 1 initial themes feedback report 2024. Okay, I think this is up to the last part. So their implementation timeline. I guess I would assume that it would be somewhere here before they launch the pilot. But it would be good to know how exactly and when exactly that public feedback will be implemented.
Yeah, I think that's important to make sure that that's incorporated into all of this sort of marketing. It'll help us sort of, collect more comments if people are, know that there's a chance that they'll be incorporated, but it's also sort of indicative of the attitudes towards, public comments in the future incorporated into this progress. So I don't want to assume anything. At this point, I want them to be able to say, here's the timeline, and this is exactly how we're going to take into account, your comments and public comments into the process.
Yeah. And this is for specifically the implementation as they're doing this Article 80 process, not necessarily when it's already been implemented, right?
Right. It's part of this current reform process. So it's basically our comments on the action plan.
Mhm.
How are those going to be incorporated into the action plan? There should be meetings around that, at least public meetings, and sort of another, you know, conversation around what they heard and how it was incorporated.
I'm taking notes, sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Is there any other feedback or any other comments?
Well, I have the same question about the implementation of the new process.
Mhm.
You know, about how we ensure that, planning is actually accountable to community feedback. Because you can have all these different mechanisms, for collecting community feedback, but it seems like there's still, like, how was that different input weighed? And it seems like, is there a summary that goes back to the community? And then just seems like there's a lot of discretionary power in the city staff's hands. And, is there any kind of recourse if a community feels it's not being heard?
Mm,
Because
Yeah, I
it's,
think like
that's been our history, like a whole community will be opposed to a project and,
yeah.
in the past, BRA, or BPDA just ignores what the community's saying.
mhm.
I think both would benefit from more of a tailored survey question rather than just a blank, submit your comments, right? Whatever you want, whatever you feel on 87 pages, like submit your comments here. But, the same things that they weighted in the beginning about what people currently thought about the current process, like people should be asked, do you feel that this action plan will solve those issues or make the process better? Or, I feel like those would be more like productive questions than just a blank, tell us what you feel.
Mhm.
So maybe it's something like that.
That's so interesting to me, Amanda, because what always frustrates me about like, um, pick 3 of the 5 issues listed. If an issue that you care about doesn't show up on the list,
Mhm.
it's when they say a menu, right, it's a pre-selected offering
Yep.
of options. So it's interesting to me because I reacted positively to the sense of openness as opposed to, you can either care about, housing, or you can care about schools, or you can care
Yeah.
about open space. Um, you know, uh, it can, I find that it can sometimes play people off of each other in a funny kind of way. Or
Definitely.
play issues off of each other, if not people. So I actually kind of liked that they had some space for talking generally. But, you both raise an excellent point, which is, say they got a lot of comments that indicated this element of the process isn't sufficiently clear or is too limiting. How do they go back and address that before they begin rolling it out on day 61?
Yeah, I agree. I
Mhm.
think that surveys are often used to sort of skew results. So I think a combination, but I think, the bare minimum should be, do you feel that we are solving, some of the goals that we set out with this action plan, and the things that they are sort of the, negative comments and thoughts around the Article 80 process. Now, are we on the right track to, improving that? Because I think there's a chance that people could say, gosh, I think cat is just a name change and it's really not going to do anything towards, you know, incorporating community concerns into the project. I could see that being one of the outcomes, but it's hard to know without more of a tailored survey, so more people can answer the same question instead of just, you know, a very wide, open-ended, which I think there's power in that as well. So I think kind of a combination, I think, would be
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, as you can see, guys, I've been scrolling through this part of their plan because it does talk about their surveys. Even though this is about the Article 8, like as it's happening, and not necessarily surveys about the process of changing and modernizing it. I think this is indicative of what we are talking about. In terms of method of engagement. However, I do wonder if they answer that, if they want to be more specific in the questions that they ask. It says here, you know, surveys with structured multiple choice questions can capture robust quantitative information. Questions can change over the course of the review to clearly show what feedback is most important.
So I think it's so fascinating that they
So,
are,
These methods complement more qualitative methods like open-ended
that in an effort to improve engagement and set best practices for engagement, they're not maybe implementing those best practices with the development of the best practice. I mean, it's kind of
Yes.
circular, but maybe you know what I
Yes.
mean.
Yes, like this, what's outlined in this action plan should be applied to the process of
The action plan.
reform.
And I feel like, I mean, in some ways they have been, but that's kind of a concern too, because it's sort of like there's a new, I do sense that there's a new culture of transparency, but posting on the website, sending mass emails, having a couple flyers is not necessarily real transparency. And, you know, you have to be like really tuned in to be aware of that. So you know, that's kind of a concern to me too, is like when we talk about, you know, broadening engagement, are we talking about, is there really a commitment to putting in the level of support that's needed to do that?
Yeah, you have to love sentences like surveys are the most popular preferred feedback method, with 78%
And
of
it's like,
the
who does
survey
that?
respondents selecting it. It's like, well, if you're responding to a survey, of course you like surveys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
would
it's,
have.
having
I-
been on the other side of it, it's also really hard to collect good public feedback. Because it is hard to reach people who are less accessible. You know, they're busy or they're you know, local papers don't exist and people don't read them. You know, all of the old sort of networks that may have worked 20 years ago clearly don't work the same way. But what are those new networks, and do they reach as broad a range of people as possible?
Mhm.
You really can't chase people down at the supermarket. They tend to get unhappy with you. But I do, you know, there's a circular quality to surveys are the most appealing because that's how people responded to our survey. If you ask the same question in a public meeting, would they say, I'd rather do a survey than be at a public meeting? I don't know.
Mhm.
I think there's also an expectation to rely a lot on ONS
Mhm.
to implement strong community engagement. And I feel like people's experience with, you know, ONS liaisons is very mixed.
Some are outstanding and some are still learning.
Allison?
Well, hi. I think in that appendix, that implementation schedule, it described the endpoint as a pilot. So the actual implementation is still a little fuzzy to me. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, it would have to go through a couple of legal reviews with zoning commission, et cetera. But yeah, it says launch pilot. So it's very confusing. I could understand that they might not want to duplicate what they did with the previous public engagement process that was analyzing the current Article 80. But I think your suggestion of public meetings makes sense. And the problem with people submitting public comments by letter is you really have to do careful reading, right? In order to pull out the bullet points of and then collate them and say how many people are saying the same thing and so on. So, but it is interesting that it says pilot. That I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thanks, Allison.
Yeah, that's a great point. How, with a pilot, you typically have to have a gate where you measure the success of the pilot, right? To see if it's accomplished the goals that you set out to do, and whether it needs to be sort of tweaked in order to move forward, or if it just goes, if it goes. But a pilot is testing still. So I feel like there should be another gate at some point where they can reassess. Maybe there's another public process where people can say, that was great, like, let's move forward with that. Or maybe we need to, try again. So some sort of gate checks in that as well.
And I think it would be really just to sort of loop back to the Commemoration Commission historic preservation aspect of this conversation. Not everybody sees historic preservation as about them and their experience. And so I would be curious how they're defining these terms or helping people understand these terms is, I think that there are some people who feel like if it's that historic preservation is about Beacon Hill and the Freedom Trail, and that's kind of it. That it's not about neighborhood character or commercial districts or walkable communities or those sorts of things. And so I think that I would love to see a little bit more description or, if these things are important to you, that's a historic preservation issue. If these things are important to you, that's an environmental issue. I don't know that a lot of people go, oh, waterlogging, that's an issue for me. But when there's water pouring into their basement apartment, that's, so it's that kind of thing of doing a little bit of that work of, when I've experienced a development in my neighborhood, some of the things that happened that I didn't like were, increased traffic, increased noise, increased shadows, my window box didn't get sun anymore, but, helping people who don't live this language all the time, fit their concerns into these buckets. Because I feel like there's a lot that fits in the historic preservation bucket that maybe isn't being captured as thoroughly as it could be this way.
Yeah, Margaret, I think you make a great point, and this is why I'm around here in the categories for CAC composition. You could assume that advocates might be in et cetera for historic preservation. But right, they're also professional experts and they're not necessarily, right? These are examples. So they're not saying, it's not saying that they're not there, but I think that's something that should be stated. I also, in the feedback that we gave them before they released this plan, we did say that we thought that selection of these cats, the Office of Historic Preservation should be part of that
Yeah.
group of people to nominate, and it's not there. Sorry, Chelsea, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to, I wanted to agree with you, I guess, on that, and make a bigger push that we need to be called out specifically. So that needs to be part of our recommendations. Just like they call out, of course, like things automatically go to conservation people and environmental people, like they should automatically be going to us as well. I'm gonna
I'll point out that
just-
neither of those groups are called out there either.
Yeah.
I mean, I could make an
Well-
argument that, you could say the sustainability expert should be a preservationist. That's that's an understanding of sustainability. A planner can be an open space planner, you can have specializations across the board.
Yeah.
Planner is not a one
One
part
size fits-
deal. Yeah.
Yeah, even better point made, Margaret. Thank you. I'm just going to take this quick minute to give you an aside comment on this, because I know you're doing like very good analysis of this document right now. But I learned something this week that I didn't know. I guess I should have known. And that none of this Article 80 revision that we're talking about right now is handling what I deal with a lot, which is Article 80 small projects. And I didn't know that that wasn't being revised at the same time as Article 80 big projects. And if anyone can offer more information on those delineations, that's great. But I just wanted to note that, like, this week I said, why do I have to keep going to these planning meetings where I'm getting like these weird projects that just assume that things can be demoed before they even hit the door? Like, why? And I said, I said to like the planning department, I said, don't you have a checklist of things that an applicant would have to acknowledge when they come into the door? And such as a historic building, this building was like an 1820s building that was just automatically totally assumed to be demoed in their first pre-file meeting for a small project. And I said, why can't we like get this list? Like, can't we add something to the list? Like, you should acknowledge that there are historic structures on your project. And one of the urban design planners said, yes, that would be awesome if we could have that checklist coming in. But right now, the Article 80 revision that's happening is not affecting small projects. So I just wanted to make that clear. And, if I'm wrong or that person was wrong, please tell me. But there's nothing about this that is, it's just talking about bigger developments. It's not talking about what I see a lot with Article 85. Okay, that's the end of my comment. I'm sorry it was so rambling.
That's fascinating. Thank you for letting us
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's disappointing. And I guess I should have like realized it, because I've been looking at all these Article 80 things for so long, but it just didn't occur to me that Article 80 is broken up into different sizes, and this one is kind of only dealing with the larger size development.
Well, and what's a concern for me, Chelsea, is if you, in your professional role in life, if that wasn't clear to you, how clear is it to community people? How clear is it to people who don't live and breathe this every day? I think that's a really important thing to raise.
Yeah, it's something that I think, like, I might just separately ask Nupur, like, when is small projects review gonna happen? Or is it gonna be folded into this or not? But I guess I need clarification that it's definitely not part of this, and then clarification as to when that review would happen.
Can I just ask us all to pause for a moment?
Mhm.
Because I am very concerned that preserving, that with this slide that we're looking at, preserving existing landmarks is not mitigation. Preserving existing landmarks, if required by the Landmarks Commission, is regulatory compliance.
Yep.
Now, it may be that preserving historic buildings not yet designated by the Landmarks Commission could be considered mitigation, but it does seem to me that this indicates to me a lack of clarity about the regulatory structure in which projects exist.
Mhm.
Yeah, it looks like it's creating a sort of loophole, you know? So when we try to say, hey, you know, look back here, they say, oh no, but that's only for designated landmarks, right?
Well, and I would also say, you know, complying with chapter 91 is not mitigation.
Yep.
You can comply at the most minimal level, or you can comply at an enhanced and improved level. But merely complying, that's not mitigation. That's just regulatory compliance. It's like building code. You just have to do it.
Good catch.
Yeah, so that I was looking for this definition. One, I think, you know, it says that for a lot of, you know, the housing one is just to comply with the inclusionary zoning requirements and with the linkage requirements. And so I'm wondering, maybe a question is, what to them, how is complying mitigation? And what's the case for pushing it further than compliance into being proactive?
Well, and also that compliance is compliance and mitigation is going above and beyond.
Exactly. It says, let's see, because actually, let's see what they said for mitigation. It's about offsetting potential negative impacts of a project. And the goal of a new definition of mitigation is to clearly connect actions taken by developers to measurable impacts. This will narrow, quote unquote, the range of items that qualify as mitigation compared to today. But I would be a little concerned about how would preserving existing on-site designated landmarks be able to be a measurable impact? That's not something that's measurable because you have to do that. Whereas, you know, mitigating potential loss of a building that's not yet a landmark, that's a pending landmark potentially, that's much easier. That's a better metric for mitigation.
Yeah. Well, if you just look at the housing
Yeah, so
one,
that's-
they have to comply with Boston's inclusionary zoning requirements. They can't get credit for doing that towards mitigation, right? Because they have to do that. So it's almost like they're saying there will be no more mitigation because it can be applied to these things.
Yeah, I think this is Frank. He commented, rather than narrowing, our friends at the BPA seem to be expanding mitigation to include and get kudos for doing what is already required.
Yes.
So I think, maybe it will be crucial to get this down on paper. And to actually get into the weeds of all 87 of these pages, because I do think that executive summary does leave a lot out. They also define community benefits more. So, okay, maybe the difference between mitigation and community benefit might, allow us to see where their heads at. So they define community benefits as a contrast. Okay. So in contrast to mitigation, community benefits are about enhancing the community by being a good neighbor. This framework creates the opportunity to build stronger connections between project-specific benefits and community needs and planning goals. So some of those examples are installing additional blue bikes above and beyond requirements. Sure. Open spaces to plant new trees above and beyond replacing any trees lost during construction. Housing would be to exceed IDP by providing additional on-site affordable units, and to provide additional funding for affordable housing.
So this
And
is
has-
interesting. They seem to be defining mitigation as compliance
Yep.
and community benefits as what I would consider a more traditional understanding of mitigation. Although I don't think monetary contributions to the city to protect historic resources in the vicinity of a project is something that we've seen as a historic preservation piece.
Right.
Yeah, I think I think this is a real opportunity for improvement.
Mhm.
Clarifying that compliance and mitigation are not the same.
Yeah. And then I think let's just review this last one just to see what they say for enabling infrastructure. It's a new term that can provide clarity for where a viable project scope ends and mitigation begins. Parentheses, what is included to enable the project versus the restoration of existing systems impacted by the project. And so the goal is to allow the city to be clear with project proponents about what counts as mitigation and what is needed to enable the project itself beyond what currently exists on the site. So an
Yeah,
example
that makes sense.
definition
So
is
they're
infrastructure.
basically, yeah, so they're saying enabling infrastructure is not mitigation. I mean, they haven't spelled that out, but I think that's what they're trying to do. But I think we should be a little more direct about what that means.
Yeah, I mean, it's this example definition of they are required to enable the project to be built, including grading infrastructure to city standards. So it's the difference between viable project scope, mitigation, and this enabling infrastructure is supposed to be the gap between those two, right? Sure. I mean, then the examples are to ensure construct a new access road for an infill development that modifies the street network, ensure that all site sidewalks and building entryways are ADA compliant. Are some examples.
And let's see if I could speak a little bit about this. Because I have gone to some of their public meetings. What you're just reading, enabling infrastructure, is what previously was considered mitigation, right? But it benefits the project itself. So they're trying to pull out the elements that actually benefit the developer's project and say that they don't qualify as mitigation. But on the other hand, they haven't really defined mitigation at all because, as you just figured out, everything that was listed there was compliance and regulatory already. So the category of mitigation is supposed to be going beyond what is required and beyond what strictly benefits the project itself. But not necessarily a wider community benefit, perhaps. I mean, I know that the category of community benefits has always been so hazy and so last minute negotiations that it often benefits projects or groups that have nothing to do with the particular location of the new project, and they just happen to be in maybe the same neighborhood. So it's just, I think this is very interesting that you're going line by line to understand this. That's all.
Yeah, thank you. No, I mean, I think it's important to close readings, close reading is how you figure out exactly what they're communicating. So I mean, I think if we had just did the summary and talked about that, I think we would have missed a lot of important things that we need to push back on. Another thing that I was wondering was I see for community benefits, these are voluntary contributions by a developer for the enhancements of public goods and services. And I wonder if there's any, process that they're looking or that they're doing and that they're implementing to see what neighborhoods would consider a benefit. Or if it's just a standard boilerplate, tree canopies, historic preservation, what they list. Yeah. Something. Yeah, so I mean, oh, they have more. They have more for their eligibility criteria. So let's see, it's a predictability, these are the outcomes. Predictably, apply standards by replacing today's ad hoc approach, create clear policies for quote unquote typical projects while retaining flexibility for large scale generational projects and institutions. And incentivize affordable housing. This framework applies to typical projects to establish predictability. This includes, Chelsea, maybe I don't how small are your small projects? Because it says small projects and large projects. The standardized framework includes a formula-based approach to mitigation, and then it says to see recommendation 2B, as well as a cap and enforce guardrails for community benefits. Okay, so maybe we should just go there. Then they also have a negotiated approach, which is retained for complex, large-scale projects, master plans, or institutional development. The negotiated approach recognizes that there will always be exceptions to any rule. Projects in this category are outliers and typically combine significant enabling infrastructure with development phases that take place over many years. As summarized above, our historic data analysis confirmed that very large projects and institutional projects are exceptional, delivering mitigation and community benefits far higher than typical projects. In these cases, formula-based standards do not accurately capture the exceptional nature of these projects. A negotiated approach therefore proposes to use the formula-based mitigation as a starting point, then adapt to specific mitigation and community benefits to the unique features of the proposed projects. In cases where the scale of the project requires site-specific zoning, includes a long-term phase build out, or has outsized impacts, the Article 80 review will inform and modify the mitigation and community benefits expectations of projects. Important guardrails for community benefits will be maintained since all projects benefit from a closer connection to planning goals and community needs. Projects or part of projects that could be themselves considered a benefit could be exempt from providing community benefits. This recommendation recognizes that some projects are unique benefits to their community by their very nature. In order to speed and incentivize the development of projects in this category, the projects are exempt from providing any community benefits. For example, affordable housing projects with 60% or more income restricted to no more than 100% area median income could be included in this category. Over and above the direct benefits of affordable housing, many affordable housing projects receive funding, subsidies from the state or city. In these cases, it is counterproductive to ask the project to pay some of that money back to the city in the form of monetary community benefits. This eligibility table shows what kind of projects qualified for each type of proposed new standard, and it says that the preliminary approach will be studied and discussed with development industry, community, and City of Boston stakeholders as it advanced further. All right. So they have affordable housing projects, small projects, large projects, complex, institutional, long-term, and large contiguous sites. So affordable housing, I think it's in that exempt category, obviously, as I stated above. And then small projects and large projects, formula-based approach where it's standardizes transportation, two kinds of mitigation, transportation and infrastructure, public realm and open space, maintain existing standards for IDP and DIP, and continue to mitigate other project-specific impacts. And some cap or guardrails are project-specific calculations suggest maximum amount of benefits that the project should deliver. Guardrails establish a set of categories from where specific benefits are chosen. Allocation of community benefits within this maximum amount is determined through Article 80 based on planning priorities with input from community members and staff. And then for the larger projects or longer term projects, they could be both. I'm not sure what this means. So it says allow large-scale generational projects to continue providing mitigation that is proportionate to the scale of their impact and enables the planning department to maximize opportunity for city building. And this category does not establish a cap on community benefits. However, guardrails are still implemented to ensure all project benefits have a close connection to planning goals and community needs. So, and I guess they want to have a consistent, I don't know if we want to stop here and discuss this or if we want to go to the next part or what we want to do. I know that it's 3:05. I have you guys until 3:30, so.
And see, though, the meeting is scheduled till 3:30, I think, I think that a close read of this, may be helpful in advance of a conversation. I appreciate that you're going through and pulling out things of specific interest. But, I think having lost our chair and our quorum and a couple of other things, it may be beneficial for us to each have an opportunity to read some of this and sit with it for a while, before we try as a group to come up with, specific recommendations. And we're about to lose another one of our committee folks. It's, I really appreciate everybody, who worked on this and brought it to everyone's attention. I think, Hennessy, you make an excellent point that an executive summary is useful, but maybe not as useful as a deep dive. I think with a focus on historic preservation, and a little bit more clarity on what's compliance and what's mitigation. At the moment, those are not insignificant changes to how they're thinking about this, but I think that they may be crucial so that people come in understanding that the Article 80 process does not substitute for the other regulatory compliance obligations that people have who are doing work within the city, whether it's public sector or private sector. And I'm afraid that this seems to could leave people with the impression that this process maybe substitutes for other processes that have a basis in law and regulation.
Right. Agree. So maybe
The short form of that is maybe wrap up for today and take the opportunity to read this before we reconnect.
Yeah, I'm picking up what you were putting down. I was thinking, I was gonna say, maybe we stop here. And you know, I did provide that sheet.
Mhm.
Actually, let me just open it so you guys can see what it looks like. You know, I sent you guys all of that feedback survey. We can take a look at what it looks like if it opens. Yeah, so it's just, are these draft changes overall heading in the right direction? What happens if I click no? Nothing. Okay. What do you think about recommendation 1? Okay, these are sure. Okay, this survey is very short, very non-specific. Because, you know, I think it would be good that if you pick one of these options, it takes you to a can you say more? Other than just additional comments and questions. So that's an option. I created this sheet just so that you guys can see it. You all have access to it. So I went a little bit more. It's not too crazy, but just the date, your name, and email. Feedback. And I did want cited page numbers. I'm a little bit more thorough. And if you had specific recommendations based on that, I want that as well. And then whether you filled out the planning form, it won't let me click on this, but it should say yes or no, or you know, whatever. Repeat, they can just initial. And I figured that would be a good way for us to, you know, if we want to review on our own time, to consolidate that information. So instead of filling out a form or emailing a dozen times, we can put this all together and just share it and say, all right, here's what we think. Yeah, so that's what I had put out there. But so if you guys think that's a good idea, then I think it's a good start to, you know, read some homework, read that 87-page document, provide some of that feedback if you have any to put it here. And then maybe we can come back once we've done that with some actual action items.
I think that's great, Hennessy, and I think that the planning staff will appreciate that because they don't want us to give them like 87 different responses to their survey.
I figured. So I think this will be good. And I can, after this meeting, what I'll get our meeting minutes done faster this time. And then hopefully I can send it out within the week, and I can send the meeting minutes as well as these documents. Like, I'll just resend them, you know, just so they don't get lost in your inboxes, and then I'll reshare this feedback form. But you guys all have access to it.
Thank you so much. That's great.
Yeah, okay, no problem. I'm happy to do it. So, all right, I don't want to keep you guys. I know people have to go. I think Lydia has to go at 3:15. So we can get a motion to adjourn in a second, and then I'll let you guys go.
So move. Or a motion
Second.
to adjourn, second, there you go.
Okay.
Thank